So in today's video, we're going to be going over the EcoFlow Delta 1300 solar generator or power station, whatever you want to call it. Now this has been said to be one of the top solar generators on the market right now, and we're going to put that to the test. So stay tuned, you won't want to miss this one. Don't forget to click that subscribe button down below as well as the thumbs up. That really helps out the channel. And then of course you get all the updated information as it comes out about new solar generators, preparedness items, and so on. So first of all, we need to go over the specs of the Delta. Now I got my cheat sheet right here. So first of all, it's called the Delta 1300. And that's based on the battery size. It actually says it's 1,260 watt hours. So close to the 1300, but not quite. It is a 12 volt system. Its draw capacity off the inverter is 1,800 watts. It is a lithium ion battery. Now its surge on the inverter is 3,300 watts. Usually it's double what the continuous wattage is, but it's 3,300. So it's a little bit less than double. Now it says its lifetime cycles is 800. Now all the inputs are actually here on the back. So this is your AC reset button. If you happen to go over 20 amps, you hit this reset button. Here on the solar input, it says 65 volts at 10 amps max, and it has an exclamation point next to that. So basically with that, it's going to be really easy to get 4 100 watt panels on it, but past that, I don't know how else we can get panels on it. Now the wall charger is extremely fast. It can charge up to 1,200 watts at a time. Now this does use an XT60 connection, and this actually comes with a car charger as well, which is very nice. And it comes with a very nice and long XT60 to MC4 adapter. So with that, that means its fastest charge time is about 3 hours, 15 minutes if you had absolute maximum solar input. And that's going to be easier to get the maximum input because it does have an MPPT charge controller in it. So that's very good. It is pure sine wave and it only weighs 31 pounds. So it's really not that heavy to move around. And these handles here do make it quite easy to move. Now as far as outlets go, on the AC side, we can see that there's actually a common ground here shared between the two outlets. What this means is that you can use up to 3 3-prong devices on it. And then if you're not using any 3-prong cables, then you can actually put up to 6 2-prong plugs. So it's got plenty of outlets, which is great. I always like to see at least 4. It does have the car outlet here. And then on the other side here, it's got 2 USB-A, and these are up to 12 watts, I believe. And then 2 more USB-A, and these are up to 28 watts. And then 2 USB-C up to 65 watts or 60 watts. The on button is right here. You have to hold it down. The display is really nice, and I do like that it shows the actual percentage of the battery. I really don't like screens that just have segmented parts where it's giving you a range. I love to see the actual percentage because then it's easier to know how much power you really have left. Now, when I was opening the box, there was like countless papers that said, activate your warranty, read this, check out your warranty. And it does say that it comes with a 2-year warranty, so that's really good. Now, I've never had to use a warranty from EcoFlow, so I can't say how good their warranty stuff is, but it's a 2-year warranty, so that's nice. Now, one of the coolest things about the Delta, and it's also kind of one of its drawbacks, is that you can actually connect up to 6 Deltas together. Now, that's really cool because with an 1,800 watt inverter in here, you're able to run quite a bit, which is really good. And a 1,300 watt hour battery is pretty decent. But the hard part is you have to buy an entire other Delta just to get battery expansion. So I really would have preferred to see just expandable batteries, but it is expandable, and that's very good. Now, as far as I've been told, with every Delta that you do connect together, you can actually install an extra set of panels for every single Delta. So that keeps the charge time the same, which is very nice. Now, the biggest downside to the Delta is its solar charge speed. It would have been really nice if they had bumped it up to a little bit larger charge controller, because the downside to having a low solar input is that if I'm running 200 watts of equipment, say I'm running my fridge and some fan during the day, if that's using 200 watts and I can only get 400 watts to go in, that would mean that I take my 400 watts going in minus the 200 watts going out to run my equipment, which leaves me with a surplus of 200 watts. That 200 watts is going into the battery. The issue with that is, let's say I use it all night long, I wake up, it's at 0%, and I need to recharge it. It's going to require a minimum of 6.5 hours at that rate of 200 watts per hour to recharge this completely. And we know for most places in the United States, it's about 5 to 6 hours for maximum solar peak hours. So what that means is it can be charged in a day, even while running some small equipment. But if I were to jump that up to 250 watts of output, then it's basically not going to be charged in a day. The real issue comes in on when it's a cloudy day. If I'm having to use my equipment to keep my food cold, and it's a cloudy day, well, I maybe am going to get 100 watts out of my solar panels. Well, I'm not going to be able to charge it in a day. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean it's a bad unit. I just wish it was a little bit bigger charge controller for the size of the battery and the size of the inverter. But enough about the specs, let's get into some testing. So this is a pretty straightforward test. I've got a bunch of light bulbs here. These are each rated to 100 watts. These are the old school incandescent light bulbs. It says we're at 100%. I got my plugs here. And then I got all these light bulbs on these power strips. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. Turn on. Now there is a button here that you have to hold. Now one of the things I did notice is that we're not running any light bulbs, but it doesn't say that there's any power being drawn off it at all, even though the fan's running and the inverter's running. So there should be some sort of charge being detected there. Okay, so for one light bulb it says it's using 98 watts. That's pretty close to 100, so that's good. So I've added a couple more things here to get it up to its full 1800 watts. So everything is a pretty stable draw. And that's what I want to test with this, is how it'll handle a steady draw of 1800 watts. So let's get as close as we can to that. I'm going to start off by turning on these heaters and the fan. I don't know if you can hear that, but the fans have really picked up inside here. And now they've kind of slowed down a little bit. So we're just below 400 watts. Now I'm going to turn these on. Okay, we're at 1780. It says the runtime is going to be 42 minutes. The fan is really blowing hard. We're just 25 watts under its maximum load. So let's see how long this runs. So with the full load, it actually ran a total of 32.5 minutes. Now we could say it ran a little bit longer, simply because it took a minute or so to get everything turned on. Now this keeps turning off. The fans are not blowing anymore. It is definitely quite warm. It's not hot. We call it 33 minutes. That's a big difference from the estimated 42 minutes that it said. So for right now, I'm actually just going to use the wall charger. And one of the nice things I really like about this wall charger is there's no adapter. This is it. So I got the wall charger, plug this in. Okay, so now it's giving me this error code. And I've seen this happen before. While at least we've got the wall charger going here, it is blowing out this hot air. I was surprised that the fans didn't keep blowing even after this was done, because it definitely needs to cool off as much as possible. So it says it's got 0 input going in. It's flashing an exclamation point with a battery and a thermometer with the sun next to it. And what that says, high temperature recharge protection. Recharging time, exclamation and high temperature icons flash together, frequently occurring after heavy battery use. Recharging can be resumed after battery cooling down. So basically, this just has to sit and will not charge until this is completely cooled down. So we'll just have to wait and see how long that is until this starts to recharge. So you can see it's about 56% right now. It's charging back up. It didn't start charging for about an hour and a half. And the vents here are still blowing out really warm air, which is not necessarily a good thing. It's not shedding off that heat very fast. But the good news is that it does charge really quick with the wall charger. Right now it's putting in about 650 watts. Now I really prefer my solar generators or power stations to have a 3-prong 30 amp RV plug built into it. The only one that I know of that's actually rated to the full 30 amp capacity is on the Titan. But because this has an 1800 watt inverter, which is larger than most power stations and solar generators out there, I feel comfortable using this 3-prong plug adapter. Now this is rated to 1800 watts, so I can plug this in and then actually use this up at my cabin to run the downstairs portion of the cabin. And I'm going to show you how I do that here in a little bit. So right now I'm just going to let this get fully charged. One thing that I found that was interesting, last night I left this fully charged and then unplugged it before going to bed, but left it on, and now it's at 98%. So there is a draw on this. Obviously it's not a large draw, but it doesn't show the actual output of just having the inverter and the unit turned on. Okay, so we're here at the cabin. I've got the EcoFlow in its little carry case here. So right now, the cabin is actually running full-time off the Titan, but I want to see if we can actually do the same with the Delta here. So I'm going to connect the Delta up right now, set up the panels. We've got to cook some stuff in the oven. We've got to run lights, fans, TV, stuff like that. We're going to try to run just like normal and see if it can handle that. If not, then we know we need to tone it back a little bit. Now, because this doesn't have an RV plug, I have to get my own adapter. plug that in. The downstairs runs off of this big plug. And then the upstairs runs off of this plug. Make that in. And then we've got some chargers and extension cords, stuff like that, runs off this. So with that, I can't fit any more. I might be able to get one 2-prong plug to fit in there. But really, even though it has 6 outlets, they're really too close. Even now, this is they're all pushing on each other, kind of pushing each other out. Okay, so I'm going to keep it right here for now. We're going to turn the oven on here. It actually uses about 800 watts, I believe. And all that is keeping a little piece of metal glowing red hot. Since it's a propane oven, that little piece of metal stays glowing red hot, so that way if the gas has to get ignited again, it's already there. So that's one thing we didn't realize at first, is that our propane oven actually uses a good amount of power. So the oven just kicked on. This is jumping up to 160, 170, and this is going to keep climbing for a while. While that gets heated up, I'm going to go get the solar panels connected. Okay, so right now it says it's only using 200 watts, but this has been going up to 650 watts. So with running the light, our cell signal booster, the oven, it seems to be maxing at about 650 watts. So that's good. The oven isn't using as much power as we thought. And it doesn't always stay on at that high draw the entire time. So I've got my cables run. I got to connect them into here. And remember to ignore colors. Just stick with male-female connectivity. It's the easiest way to keep yourself from getting confused. I'm going to go ahead and plug these in. Hopefully this works. So we can see here, it's showing, rather than the net value, it's showing what's the total input and the total output, which I actually prefer in many ways because I like to be able to see how my panels are doing. So this is really nice. I like this display. It's very intuitive. It's very smart. What this means right now is that we're actually charging the battery rather than just drawing off of it. So this is great. This says recharge time, it'll take 3 hours to get that last 12%, because really we're only making 70, 80 watts here is the difference. It's a little bit later in the afternoon, so we're not in peak solar hours right now. And there also is a bit of haze in the sky, which is going to make a difference. But you can see that this just jumped up to over 600 watts. And now this is saying rather than charge time, you can see that this circle is not spinning. It's saying that our run time is now 3 hours. Now this does feel really warm on the top right here. So hopefully it doesn't get into that heating issue like we did on the other test, because we're not running this super hard, but it's definitely warm on the top here. Okay, so I'm just going to let this run. We'll do a checkup here in a little while. Probably after the sun goes down, and see how we're looking. I get the question all the time of how I bring my cables in. For our Titan, with the permanent installation, I actually have a hole in the wall. But for normal use at home, when I'm having to use a setup like this, there's a door gasket here. And all I do is just close the door like that. And you can see it's just barely a tiny opening there. And I'm okay with that. I can still lock this and everything. It's only been a little bit, but I noticed that the screen keeps turning off, and that's something I really dislike. I like to be able to look at a distance, see what we're at. We're at 86%, so we're still holding pretty good. So I've been outside the last 3 hours or so, been doing yard work, trimming trees, and all sorts of stuff, getting our cabin cleaned up. This has been running the entire time. My kids did about an hour and a half of playing the Wii. They were playing Just Dance. So they had the TV, the Wii, the lights, the fans, all of that stuff running. Now that's something that we usually do each time we come to the cabin. They love playing that game. And we only have it up here at the cabin. So we are down to 21%. It says we have 1 hour left, and we're currently using about 120 watts, basically to run the lights, the fridge, and things like that. So this is clearly not going to last us through the whole night. So I think maybe it would have done better if we had not run the oven. But we only ran the oven for about 25 minutes, so that was only roughly 200 watt hours of capacity. So that really didn't use much. What this tells me so far is that we're going to actually have to pull back on using a lot of things if we were to use this as a battery backup and solar generator for the cabin. We probably wouldn't be able to run the TV if we had just stuck to using the fridge, maybe the oven for a really short time, maybe using the microwave instead. Because if we had done that, that probably would have left us with a little bit more battery. So that's really good to know. I'm glad we did this test. I definitely think this would work, but only just running bare minimum essentials. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch back over to the Titan for the night, because I know this isn't going to last the whole night. But then I'll let this recharge by solar tomorrow, and then we'll give it another go and see how it goes. Okay, well, it's early the next morning. The sun's just come up over the hill. And I had these panels positioned for the evening sun that way, so I'll go ahead and turn these around. So in a couple of hours, the sun will be up kind of high past these trees a little bit, and then I'll rotate these panels so that way they're ready for a full day of sun exposure. But right now, let's see what kind of charge this is getting. A little bit of shade coming through the trees. So obviously we're not going to be getting full power right now, but it says we are getting 52 watts in. So it says at our current rate it's going to take 19 hours. Obviously that'll change as the sun gets up higher. So I didn't get it recorded, but you see this is over 300 watts charging now. Panels are in full sun. It's been about 2 hours since this was at about 52 to 57 watts. And the solar panels were in full sun and it was still saying 52 watts. So I was really confused. I checked the panels, checked the cabling and everything like that. And then I unplugged the solar cable from the Delta, waited about 5 to 10 seconds, then plugged it back in, and it jumped right over to 300 watts. So I don't know what's up with that, but it seemed like it was getting no charge and then a slight charge, and then it just got stuck there. And it's something you may not notice because the screen will turn off on its own, and so you have to constantly be pushing a button to get the screen to turn back on. So as I'm walking around the cabin doing things, I can't see if this is actually getting a good charge or not. So it's really annoying. That's probably one of my biggest gripes so far about it, is just the screen will not stay on. Now the reason that's a really big concern is because the last 2 hours, this could have been charging at a much faster rate, and it wasn't. And that's a really big problem because now I'm behind on my charge today. 2 hours at 300 watts or even 200 watts while the sun was still coming out could have made a big difference in my battery charge and being able to run stuff. So that's really a big problem, because if I can't depend on this just to charge, on its own, then I'm gonna have to reset the cable every day. That's kind of annoying. Alrighty, it's been another 2 hours. I've been outside doing tons of yard work, cutting trees and stuff like that. We're still close to about 300 watts, so it's got about 1 hour left to charge. We're at 75%, so that's about how fast it's charging. Okay, it's been another hour. This now says 40 minutes. What I'm starting to realize is that it either says 1 hour or 2 hour, but it doesn't tell you like 1.2 hours or 1 hour, 15 minutes or whatever. So it can be a little deceiving on how long this will actually take to charge or its actual run time. So that's something to keep in mind as well. It still works. We're almost fully charged. We're at 250 watts right now, so it looks like I need to go adjust the panels a little bit so that we can get a little bit more sun exposure. Okay, it's been an hour and a half, and this just got to 100% and stopped charging. So that took a little bit longer than I thought it would to charge, but I think part of that was due to the fact that it wasn't actually really charging this morning. It was only at 50 watts when it could have been probably around 200 or more. So I'm going to do another test where we come back and use this without running the oven and just running the bare essentials and see if it has that same issue with recharging. So it's actually been a couple of days. I've left the panels out here, left the Delta running, been doing more tests and things like that. And as you can see here, these flex panels, I did not secure them on the bottom. And this is what will happen when it gets kind of windy, is it can kind of push these in. So that might be one reason to go with a rigid panel over a flex panel. The advantage of the flex panel is that it's very lightweight and very easy to move around and set up. The disadvantage is that it is flexible, and so unless it's really pinned down, they can move around a bit, and that would definitely not happen with the rigid panels. All in all, they're still working perfectly fine. I'm obviously going to fix the one on the right there. And we are using the Delta to run the whole cabin again. You can see we're doing a bunch of yard work here, cleaning out a bunch of old wood and stuff like that. But for now, the Delta's running everything just fine, just like before. We're going to give it another go, see if we can make this work running just the essentials. So we can see here we're actually at 36%. We've only been here for a few hours, but sadly with how much time is left in the day, we're definitely not going to be charged up again before it's really dark. So what I'm noticing so far is that the battery's big enough to really handle really light loads, and that the solar input's big enough, again, to charge in a day, but it's got to be running like just a refrigerator or something like that. Because even with this load, I mean, it hasn't been a perfectly clear sunny day. So I can see this potentially working with something like an RV and running real basic LED lights and stuff like that, but running TVs in addition to everything seems to be taking up a decent amount of power. So we can see right now there's actually a huge fluctuation in the solar input. It's down to 97, 70, it's fluctuating quite a bit because the clouds are coming in. So this is definitely a real world experience when it's not perfect weather, which is definitely a good thing to see. Well, it's next morning. The panels are adjusted to be facing more east, so that way they can get the early morning sun. And at first we started at about 30 watts, and now we're up to 130 watts. So it doesn't seem to have the same issue that it did last time, where it didn't go above a certain number. So we'll give a little bit more time here to charge up. It's still pretty early in the morning, and see how this goes. It's been a couple hours now, and it's obvious that the panels didn't have that stall because we're over 200 watts. We're at 55%. I got a couple hours left until it'll charge, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. But now what I want to do is actually use this car charger and see how well it charges. We're about to leave the cabin, so I want to see how well this works and how fast it can charge, what its charge rate is. Okay, I've got it plugged in here and plugged in to the side, and it says we are currently doing 129 watts input and it's charging. So it's going to take anywhere from 4 to 5 hours to charge. So we don't have that long of a drive, but it is nice that it's got a car charger and that we can use that in case we needed to while on a long drive. So we'll be driving around for a little while here. You definitely want to make sure that your vehicle is running, because otherwise this will drain the battery and then you'll have a dead vehicle. So now we are back at the house, and using the car charger I was able to get this up to 70%. That was driving back and forth, going and picking up lumber and stuff like that for a project that we're working on that I'm about to show you. So I know this isn't at 100%, but one of the big tests is, can it run a chop saw? Now we're actually going to be building a big shed or a shop here on the property, and I'd like to be able to build the entire thing off just solar, using the solar panels, the solar generator. So I want to know, can this handle that? This is supposed to be one of the best units out on the market. It's got an 1800 watt inverter, so it should be able to run something like this. It might only be able to run it when it's at 100%. I don't know. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Okay, I'm going to be doing this with no load, no wood or anything. Let's just see. Okay. I wanted to start, but it didn't go all the way. It sounds like the fan's turned off and I need to return on AC power. Yep. I have to give this another try, see what happens. Yeah, see, it's just flashing. Oh, that does say 50 hertz. Interesting. Okay, so it turns off. Get the power back on. Now it says 60 hertz. That's really weird. Okay, well that didn't work, so I'm going to go get this fully charged real quick and we'll try this again. Alright, so now I got this at 100%. I'm going to go ahead and plug this big chop saw into it. This is the moment of truth. 100% full load. Here we go. No, same issue. Now, of course, not everybody's going to be running a big chop saw like this. This might work with a smaller chop saw, but with a big one like this, it's not working. So that's really too bad. But all in all, it's still a pretty okay unit. It'll definitely run the smaller items. I just wish it could run this bigger one. Okay, I want to do another test here. Got a 5,000 BTU air conditioning unit. It's just a window unit. Now the general rule of thumb for an air conditioner is you take however many BTUs it is and you multiply it by 10% or 0.1, and that gives you the average amount of running watts when the condenser is running. So we're going to give this a test, and let's go ahead and turn on the fan. This has a fan, low cool, high cool, and turbo cool. I was blowing the fan, no problem. And then I have this on, it's got a scale from 1 to 7. I got it all the way up on 7. It says we're using about 80 watts, so pretty normal for a fan. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn on to low cool. You hear the condenser kick on. No problem there. So that 10% average is pretty accurate so far. Now let's go to high cool. Okay, 470, not bad. Turbo cool. 490, okay. So it is running at no problem at all. The deal is this has to stay running. It can't turn off the condenser and just be running the fan and then kick back on and keep running. So basically, if you can keep it running with the condenser, you're good to go. Because watch this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simulate that the room has gotten cold enough that the condenser turns off and just runs the fan. And then as the room temperature rises, the condenser will kick back on. That's pretty normal for how these things run. So I'm going to simulate. You heard the condenser kick off. We're down to 83 watts. I'm going to turn it down to low cool, so it's on the lowest setting. And now I'm going to simulate the condenser kicking back on while in normal operation. Now, if I reset this, I'm going to turn off the AC, fan on. So if I go straight to turbo cool, it doesn't work. So it just needs to start up slowly. So in an RV or something like that where it has a slow start, as long as that works while it's in normal operation, to slow start back into the condenser again, I think this would work perfectly fine. I've got one more test to do. It says it's 65 volts and 10 amps max, but I've tested this on other units where we can actually go a little bit above these parameters and still get a good charge. But as you can see, I've got 6 solar panels laid out here. I got these 3 connected in series, those 3 connected in series, and then it comes to a splitter to go to parallel. Okay, well it's actually working. It's only getting 160 watts or so right now. So hopefully we get a break in the clouds and I can test this in full sun. So this is what I wanted to show you. I did another test where I left the Delta plugged in all night long and turned on with the panels connected. That way, as soon as the panels could start making power, they would start inputting into here. Now this has been charging for about 2 hours now at about 74 watts. Okay, so you can see there's full sun out. Panels are in full sun, but right here it's still showing just above 70 watts. It's not getting higher than 76 so far. So I'm gonna go ahead and unplug this, plug it back in. You see immediately, you can see just like that now it's showing 250, 257. So you can see right there, that's exactly what happens with the Delta if you leave this plugged in overnight. Apparently it only happens sometimes, but it will not get the full power of the panels unless you reset it. I have no idea what causes that, but I'm really glad that we found that out. On the bright side, it is really nice to know that we can get 6 100-watt solar panels connected to the Delta, rather than just the 400 watts that it originally said. Well, there you have it. That's what the Delta can and can't do. It's still all around a pretty good unit. It definitely is concerning when you run it really hard and then it takes forever to cool off in order to recharge again. So that's a bit concerning. We did have that one issue where the panels were getting sunlight and it was almost midday, but they were still only making about 50 watts, and then I had to disconnect it and reconnect it into the Delta in order to be making full power for the day. So all around, I think it's an okay solar generator or power station or solar rechargeable battery, whatever you want to call it. Stop freaking out about the name. Whatever you want to call this, I think it's pretty okay. It's definitely not my first choice, but it is something that I feel would be okay to recommend as long as you are running just bare minimal essentials. The other thing that I would definitely recommend getting with the Delta is one of these splitters. You can use a normal power strip if you've already got one, but the reason I like these is because they're rated to 1800 watts, which is the full draw capacity of the Delta. It just gets too cluttered with how close all those outlets are. If it's for a weekend getaway with a camper or you're going camping, I think it would be great. Long-term power outage, just bare essentials, and it's very risky if you don't have a lot of good sun. Thank you so much for staying with me to the end of this video. I know they can be quite long. I hope it was educational. I hope it was helpful for you. So let me know in the comments down below if you think this is something that would work for you, or if you need something bigger or smaller. What are the main things that you need to run? I'm always looking for things that I can test off these solar generators that everybody uses in everyday life. So if there's things that you want to see run off these different solar generators, go ahead and comment down below, and I usually do a pretty good job getting back to those comments pretty quick. If you want more information about the Delta, please visit poweredportablesolar.com. If you have questions about the Delta, other solar generators, or just solar in general, shoot me an email at info@poweredportablesolar.com, and I'd be happy to help out. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, it really helps. And of course, if you like this video, don't forget to share it with someone who also may be interested. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, because we've always got good information coming out. I am not sponsored in any way by EcoFlow. They did not send me this unit for free. I paid for it out of my own pocket. I did all of my own testing out of my own pocket and my own time, so that way you can get an honest, true review about it. If you feel that the Delta is something that would work well for you, go ahead and go down to the links below, and you'll find links to where you can purchase this, as well as the other recommended items like cables, adapters, and so on. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch you guys next time.